So, a reward when I was younger was always going to McDonald's, and that would often be based on my behaviour. So, what I'm going to do here is store what my behaviour is like, and I'm going to say it can either be good or bad. So, let's pretend that my behaviour is bad to start with. Please note when I created this variable here that I used the second word began with a capital. Okay, and it's just good practice to stick with that. And of course, third, fourth, and fifth words would be started with the capitals, but again, no spacing. So, Tom behaviour equals bad. Notice that I've put it in speech marks. Hopefully, you can tell me why I've put it in speech marks. Is because the computer doesn't understand the English language, so we just need to tell it, just trust me, you don't have to understand it, just recognise those three letters. So, Tom's behaviour equals bad. My mum would say something like, if Tom's behaviour equals good, hopefully in a slightly less robotic way, then we get to go to McDonald's. And if we run that, because my behaviour is bad, we didn't meet this condition. And thus, it never wrote to the text window, go to McDonald's. So I would like to display that message, so of course I could switch Tom's behaviour to be good. And sure enough, it now says go to McDonald's. In fact, for testing purposes, we could even switch this so that it's a user input. So I'm just going to simply write text window, because that's where we're getting the user input from. Dot read. And that allows us to read what the user types in. So my mum used to be a bit fussier than this, and she'd often say if Tom's behaviour was good and Will's behaviour was good. Now, a common misconception when you're using this AND statement within an if statement is to say if Tom's behaviour is good, we could say if Tom's behaviour and Will's behaviour. Equals good. Well, the computer just will not understand this. The only thing the computer can understand is these statements here, when you've got something to check and something to check it against with an operator either side of it. So we need a whole statement like this on each side. So if Tom behaviour is good and Will behaviour is good, so we're going to need to take this equals good and take it over to next to Tom's behaviour as well. So now we're checking to make sure that both of those things are good. So at the moment we don't ever actually set Will's behaviour. So if we run the program, and we can see it says it's used, but its value is not assigned, so we need to assign it a value. So why don't we do that before in our program? Will behaviour. And again, we'll write that in. Text window dot read. So now it will ask me, then I type in my behaviour, Will's behaviour, and then it will tell us whether we can go to McDonald's. So if both of our behaviours are bad, so I was bad and my brother was bad, nothing is written. However, if we run the program again, and my behaviour is bad but his is good, we still find that we can't go to McDonald's. But only if Tom's behaviour is good and Will's behaviour is good. See if we can get to McDonald's this time. Sure enough, we get to go to McDonald's. So this is how the AND statement can be used to check that two things are true. And again, this statement and each of those two statements will both respond either true or false. Was Tom's behaviour good? If it was, then it understands that to be true. Was Will's behaviour good? Well, yes it was, so we respond that as true. If it wasn't, then it understands that as false. And that's what we mean by Boolean. It either gives true or false responses. There's another situation which we can have, which is OR. And let's think of another example for that. Again, my mother would say, if one of you has done the dishes. Now, that doesn't mean that both of us have to do the dishes. That just means between my brother and myself, we would have to make sure the dishes were done. So in this situation I can say if Tom dishes equals yes, or Will dishes, again we'll let autocomplete save us here, equals yes, then we get to go to McDonald's. So this is my mum just wanting somebody to have done the dishes. Now in this situation they're both no. And if I run this condition, it means we don't get to go to McDonald's. However, if one of them is yes, we get to go to McDonald's. And it doesn't matter which one is yes. And also, if both of them are yes, again we get to go to McDonald's. So we can start understanding Boolean like so. True or true equals true. Now that sounds very, very confusing. But essentially what this means is, if this statement's true, or this statement's true, then we will run our condition. True, we will run it. True or false equals, well, again this would be saying if Tom says yes or Will says yes. Now if one is yes and one is no, well yeah, the condition still runs because either that or that need to be true. So in this situation, true, we still do run the condition. Let's have a look at a situation where we can say what about false and true? So if I haven't done the dishes and Will has, well yes, the condition will still run. And there's of course one last situation to check, which is false, or false. Which basically means have neither of us done the dishes. And if neither of us have done the dishes, then we don't go to McDonald's, which means that it would be false. It's worth getting your head around this. Now, although this looks pretty ugly to me and hard to interpret, common sense seems to be the best way, and putting something into context seems to be the best way of understanding these things. However, you can translate this into this fairly crude way of looking at Boolean expressions. You can have Boolean expressions with or, with a variety of different or statements. And you can have Boolean statements with a variety of different and statements, and even a mixture of the two, which gets things awfully complicated. I'm not expecting you to fully understand that just yet, but it's an indication of how things can progress forwards.